My father was in room 12 of the critical care wing in Pune, dying of the things you die of when you ignore doctors for 40 years. I had driven 3 hours to be there. I had not come sooner. He was asleep when I arrived. The nurse said he might not wake until morning. I sat in the plastic chair beside his bed and waited, and I thought about everything I should have said over the past 6 years and couldn't find a way to start any of it. At 2 in the morning, I went downstairs to the hospital lobby. There was a printer near the front desk. There was a stationery shop that sold gift ribbons. I printed 1 page. I wrote 3 sentences on it by hand. I tied a small ribbon across the corner because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. I went back upstairs and put it under his hand and sat back down in the plastic chair. He woke at 7. He read the page slowly, the way he read everything, like the words might change if he looked away too soon. Then he folded it in half and put it under his pillow without saying anything. He died on a Thursday, 4 days later. The certificate was still there. After the funeral, the nurse who had been with him at the end found me outside. She said, "I heard your father kept something you made for him. My husband and I haven't spoken properly in 8 months. Could you make one for me?" I said, "It's just something I printed." She said, "I know. Could you make one?" I made one. She pressed 700 rupees into my hand, more than I had asked for, which was nothing. A week later she called again. She said, "He read it." He called me that same evening. We talked for 2 hours. I wrote that down in a notebook and didn't know what to do with it. A month later I posted a photo of the original, my father's name blurred out, the ribbon still on it with the caption, "My dad kept this. I'm not sure why I posted it." I deleted it after an hour. 37 people had already shared it. The messages started that evening. I made each one from my kitchen table. A formal header, 3 lines, a blank for the reason, a ribbon from the craft shop downstairs. 500 rupees, 800 if they wanted a handwritten note from me on a separate card. I wasn't running a business. I was a person who had found something that seemed to help people and couldn't think of a reason to stop. By month 3, I was covering rent. By month 5, my cousin Deepak was driving to the post office with a box of envelopes every morning. I bought a second printer and put it in the bedroom. I still hadn't figured out what to call it. I just kept going. A journalist found the post I deleted, she had a screenshot, and wrote a piece with the headline, "Pune man sells forgiveness for rupee 500. I hated the headline. The piece ran on a Sunday morning. By Monday afternoon, I had 400 new orders. I spent 2 days calling people to explain I couldn't fulfill them that week. I expected frustration. Instead, they said, "Take your time. We've waited this long." That line stopped me. We've waited this long. These weren't people buying something on impulse. These were people who had been carrying something for years, a parent they hadn't called, a friend they'd hurt, a silence that had stretched past the point where either person knew how to end it. They had tried everything else. A printed certificate was not the obvious solution. It was the last one left. I hired 2 more people. We moved the operation from my flat to a small office in Kothred. I ordered a sign for the door. It took me 3 weeks to decide what to put on it. 2 years in, someone invited me to speak at a startup conference in Bengaluru. I stood on stage and explained the idea, what the business did, who the customers were, how the orders worked. The audience was polite and curious. A man in the front row raised his hand. He said, "Has it worked for you personally?" I said, "Yes." That wasn't a lie. The certificate I had made for my father had worked. He had died with it under his pillow. What I didn't say was this. My mother had called me every week for a year before my father died, asking me to visit. I had been busy, and then I had been avoiding it, and then I had run out of reasons and was just not going. After my father died, she stopped calling. I had not called her either. That had been 3 years ago. I got off stage and checked my phone out of habit. No messages. I put the phone back in my pocket and went to find some water. On a Tuesday evening in October, after everyone else had left the office, I sat at my desk and made one. I had printed tens of thousands of these by then. I knew the template the way you know a route you drive every day without thinking, without looking. I printed it, folded it, slid it into a plain envelope. In the reason line, I wrote, "For not coming sooner." It was the most common thing people wrote. I had seen it hundreds of times in orders. In the notes customers sent afterward, in the messages that came when someone wrote to say it had worked. I had helped dozens of people send exactly this. I had never thought about why that particular phrase was so common until I wrote it myself and my hand stopped for a moment. I sealed the envelope, wrote her address, put a stamp on it. I posted it on the way home that night. No note inside. No phone call to warn her. just the certificate. She called on Thursday afternoon. I picked up on the second ring, which I hadn't planned. She said she had kept the envelope on the fridge for 2 days before she could open it. She said she knew it was from me by the handwriting on the address. She asked why I hadn't included a note, and I said I didn't know what to say beyond what was already on the page. She said that was enough. Then she started crying, which made me start, which I hadn't done since the hospital. We talked for 47 minutes. It wasn't a difficult conversation that surprised me. It was the conversation we would have had 3 years ago if either of us had started it. That week the company crossed 1 crore in revenue. I found out on Friday from a message from my accountant. I read it twice and thought, I should feel more than I do about this. What I felt was 47 minutes on the phone on a Thursday. What I had spent 5 years selling was the one thing I needed most and came to last, which is not a business strategy. But it is, I think, an honest way to end up somewhere worth being.